You're not going to grow as a photographer if you rely on post-processing, period.
Hello everyone, Tomasz here, and you are listening to Photography Radio. I have another interview for you today. My guest is Valerie Jardin, internationally renowned street photographer, one of the most active photography educators, prolific book author, and a fellow podcaster. We are talking with Valerie about the genre of street photography itself, about the ways it has been changing over the years and decades. I ask Valerie about things she's looking for herself when walking the streets of different cities of the world, and we touch also on street photography laws and discuss some street photography settings and techniques. I had a wonderful time talking to Valerie, and I do hope very much you will enjoy and learn a lot from what she was so generous to share with us during my conversation with her. Here it comes, my interview with Valerie Jardin.
Can you imagine your life without photography? No? Then you will love this show. And it doesn't matter if you're a DSLR, a mirrorless, or a mobile phone shooter. We're here to help your photography grow. This is Photography Radio.
Valerie, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation here. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Well, it's been a long time. It's so good to hear your voice. And
yeah, pretty early for you, right? Am I dragging you out of bed?
No, it's, oh gosh, I wish at 8 o'clock. I've been up for a few hours. I'm good. Wide awake.
Excellent. Listen, I consider you to be one of the most experienced street photography experts out there.
Oh, thank you.
You have been doing street for as long as I can remember. You have published several books on this topic. You regularly sell out your street photography workshops. You are also a fellow podcaster, and you run your own show called Hit the Streets.
Yeah.
So
6 years of podcasting, or more than that, probably. Well, between the two shows, yeah, over 250 episodes total.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Hats off. I think I need some time to catch up. We're into our fourth week. So listen, today I would like to kind of run a little experiment with you. I would like to try to deconstruct the concept of street photography with you.
Oh boy.
Both in its traditional meaning as well as in what it does mean to you today. Mm-hmm. So are you up for this task?
That's fine. There was no warning. So this is as spontaneous as you're going to get, people.
That's what I love, about doing this podcast. If you would have to define, street photography today, what would your personal definition sound like?
Well, for me, it is what I think it was originally. It's a slice of life. It's pure. It's untouched. It's and that's my approach to shooting street photography. It is 100% candid and unaltered. I barely even get into Lightroom, and to me that is really important to. It is important to me. I know people say, well, people don't care and they don't know if you remove something or this. I'm like, yeah, but I do. And I'm the one person I have to please. And how I feel about it is very important. So to me, it's raw, it's untouched, it's an emotion. It could be an emotion created by light. It could be an emotion created by a stranger's eyes, a gesture, but it is completely spontaneous, or not spontaneous is not the word. It's candid. It's never posed or staged. And how I feel about humor versus making fun and such. Street humor is very difficult. Making fun of someone on the street is pretty easy. So there are a lot of distinctions, and that's why it is the most difficult genre in photography, period. No matter what people can say, if you do it the way it is intended to be done, it is difficult. And that's why you have so few keepers at the end of the day, right?
And by pure, you mentioned you mentioned the situation on the street itself, right? When you are out there on the streets, but you also mentioned the post-processing, right? That you actually these days don't touch the files. They're straight out of the camera.
I shoot. As you know, I've been shooting with the X100 series for as long as it's been around. And at first, like everybody else, when I switched, I shot RAW, and I haven't shot a RAW file in 4 years, at least 5 years, maybe. I make the decision in camera. If it's going to be black and white, it's going to be black and white in camera, and I make the settings in camera. We don't need post-processing for street photography. We should only use it to maybe tweak slightly if the vertical is just slightly crooked or tilted, then maybe straighten that, add a tiny bit of clarity, and that's it. 5 seconds is all you need. If it takes more than 5 seconds for a street photo, then the photo is not worth it.
Okay, but in order to be satisfied with the final image, especially exactly when you shoot, JPEG unaltered, when you want it straight out the camera, of course you have to be happy what's actually coming out of this camera. So does it mean your choice of the camera itself was based on this output that in your case Fujifilm is producing?
Originally it wasn't, but now that's the reason why I would not change camera. And I've had a lot of options, but I just love the black and white that comes out of that camera. I shoot acros with yellow filter. I make the adjustments in camera. So usually the file comes out the way I want it. And I shoot all my color in classic chrome. And there is nothing that needs to be altered from those two. If I was to shoot RAW, why would I settle with Adobe's rendition of classic chrome or acros? It'd be ridiculous. It's never going to be as good as the one that's coming out of my camera. So more and more people are shooting JPEGs now. There was that for a while, and I think that's kind of a pixel peeper thing that, you need to shoot RAW. If you don't shoot RAW, you're not a real photographer. I'm like, well, so be it. I don't care, but I don't shoot RAW. I'm still using an old version of Lightroom, by the way. I can't even shoot RAW because it wouldn't even open my files.
So it means we just had this discussion on another episode of this of the podcast here. You would probably not put your signature under this, kind of famous religious statement, the camera doesn't matter.
Well, I think the camera matters in the fact that you have to feel good about your camera. It has to be an extension of you. It should not come in the way. That's why I don't change cameras. I don't ever want to try new cameras unless it's in that, either an X100 or an X Pro, because those are the two cameras I'm familiar with. And learning new gear gets in the way of your creativity, in my opinion, because the camera should be an extension of you. So the camera matters if it is, if it feels right. That's when it matters. And it matters too. If having, a red dot on your camera makes you happy, get one. Because if you're a happy photographer, you're going to be a better photographer and you're going to go out more. So whatever camera gets you out the door. The only reason the camera matters, it's because the camera that's going to get you out the door is the camera that's going to make you a better photographer. It's not the camera itself.
Have you had a chance to photograph with the new Fujifilm, with the X Pro 3?
No, not yet.
You must have heard about the heated discussions on the internet, right?
No, I stay completely away from those.
Okay, that's actually a good idea. Let's get back to photography immediately. When walking the streets, now let's get to your photography. So when walking the streets, observing the surroundings, what kind of visual elements are you reacting to? Are there any particular scenarios or, that you tend paying attention to?
Well, unless I'm working on a series or a personal project, I let the streets surprise me and I follow the light. So, for example, it's Paris in January and the light is very special. And so when it's a sunny day, I will follow the light. I will walk on the side of the street where the light works. I love to shoot into the light, for example. Mm-hmm. I love to get sunburst and things like that. So I will follow the light. I will look for subjects that are that are looking particularly good in that light, because I'm not going to settle for just anyone walking by. It has to be a subject that fits my criteria, that really gives a sense of place. If the light is dull, then I look for expressions and gesture and smiles and eyes and close-ups. I have a series on hands. So I get really close. I get much closer to people when it's an overcast day, for example, and I'm more likely to shoot color when it's overcast, because the color will be more beautiful in an overcast day than in a sunny day. So I look for different things, but it's almost as if I put a roll of film in my camera too. If I can be in the morning, I can wake up in a black and white mood, and I'm just going to shoot black and white. And so I'm only going to look for subjects. I'm only going to react to subjects that are fitting for black and white. If it's the opposite, I'm going to react completely differently. I always let the subject dictate my choice. So if I'm in the field and I see a subject that only makes sense in color, I'm going to quickly switch to classic chrome if I wasn't in black and white. So I don't have a lot of rules. I really let the mood of the day, the light, guide me. And your mood says so much about your work. Looking back, and I call it emotional metadata. And I don't know, I said that once on a podcast for someone, and it just came out. And I don't know if it's been used before. I have never heard it, but that emotional metadata to me is much more important than the metadata. And it is attached to every picture. When you look at your work, even years ago, you go right back to that same mood, the smells of the streets, the sound. That is what photography is about. And when I go back and look at some photographs, and I love doing the creative vision behind the lens, when I give the story, how I was feeling that day, my creative process. And I do that in books, and I do that on my webinars, because it really explains why I shot this way. Why was I drawn to a lone subject versus a crowd? Because it reflects the way I was feeling that day. And all that is so important. It really is part of the creative process. So much more than your settings.
What does your emotional metadata dictate you in terms of black and white versus color?
Well, certain cities are more black and white than others, but like last year, exactly a year ago, I was in Havana, and I was really determined not to shoot the Havana that I was seeing on social media everywhere. It's like, okay, enough with the old cars already. And so I shot more black and white in Havana, and the only time where I actually had an old car, it was out of focus in the background behind a Chihuahua. That was my main subject in the middle of the street. So I really tried to see it differently, and I find that the color is so powerful in Havana that it distracts from the emotion of the people. And they're such beautiful people that I find that black and white actually gives them, relates that emotion a lot more. So in Havana, I shot about 2/3 black and white, actually, more than probably most people who go there.
But don't you think that there must be some kind of a reason behind it, that exactly majority of people react in a certain place, with, okay, let's shoot color here, and your decision on going black and white was it not more of a intellectual brain decision? Let's go against this trend.
No, actually no, because the first day I was in color, and then I realized that there was so much color that the color became the subject, and to me it wasn't that. To me it was about the emotion and the smiles of those people that were so welcoming. And I would walk into some, little repair shop, and in the middle of the night, you're in Havana, it's so safe, and people are so friendly, and they invite you in their homes. And I wanted to portray that, not the colors on the walls. And so it all depends how you approach it. either you doing more travel photography, and then it's going to be more about the color of the place because it is a colorful place, same as Rome. But if it's about the people, then the color becomes a major distraction. I mean, I've done a lot of color, but my favorite shots are the black and white shots.
Why would you say Paris is more of a black and white place?
Well, I'm French and I'm always wearing black and white. So.
Well, what is it about this place? There is much green, as far as I remember. You know, the window shades, and I don't know, the kiosks.
Oh, that's right. And the French blue. So, the blue from the flag is everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Right. But somehow we see so many black and white photographs of Paris.
And we may be influenced by the early street photographers, the masters. I mean, I grew up with Joanneau and Cartier-Bresson posters on my walls that, some people have rock stars. I had pictures from them on my walls as a kid, not knowing I would ever even photograph people on the street. But that's kind of how you grew up in France, and that tradition and knowing how to appreciate street photography. A lot of people don't understand it. So maybe it had an influence. When I'm in Paris, I'm definitely more black and white. But like today on Instagram, I posted a color shot of Paris. It's classic chrome. So I really let the subject dictate.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think technology in a way dictates very much, like Cartier-Bresson, he could only shoot black and white back then, right? Do you think he would actually be choosing, for example, color film today if he would be alive and having this option?
I'm pretty sure he would do that too. I mean, if the subject was all about color, he probably would choose color. And some people choose one or the other consistently in their body of work, and that's totally fine. That's a choice. I mean, it's much harder to shoot color in street photography, but I let the subject dictates my choice or the place. Mm-hmm. And so I have both. I have more black and white, but I've never shot more color than since classic chrome was available. That's real to me. Classic chrome has that, how the tone, it has that timeless feel and look of black and white in a way, but in a color palette. It has that timeless feel. I don't like Velvia, I don't like oversaturated for street photography. That's just not me. I mean, I never even wear colors. So
it will be interesting to see now what kind of imagery will start, showing up after their new simulation. They just introduced with the X-Pro 3. I think it's called Classic Negative or something like this, right?
Yeah.
So apparently it's similar to Classic Chrome, but a slightly bit more saturation in the colors.
I'm not even going to change. Doesn't matter as long as they make Classic Chrome, I'm going to stick with it because
okay.
I like the consistency in a body of work too. If you work on a series in Classic Chrome and all of a sudden you change in a series, for example, it doesn't look very good.
Absolutely.
I like, it's like it kind of dates your work. Just like if you start putting, doing black and white with just a splash of red in your pictures, well, that's not going to look good in a body of work. It's a fad. And I kind of like the classics. You can't go wrong with the traditional black and white, or the classic chrome. So I'll probably stick with that.
Okay. So we talked about, things about the elements that kind of catch your eye, you are looking. And on the contrary, are there any things that you consciously ignore, like things that you are sure don't belong into your photographs?
So I don't photograph people in vulnerable situation or an embarrassing situation. I don't photograph people looking at their phone because I look at it as a challenge, actually. I even stay away from e-cigarettes right now because unless you don't see the cigarette, the steam, whatever, looks kind of cool in the winter. But I kind of like traditional cigarettes. So people sitting at a cafe, just smoking a cigarette in Paris and reading the newspaper, that I am drawn to. That is the Paris I want to portray. But somebody on their phone with an e-cigarette, yes, it is today, but to me it becomes too boring and too common, and so I try to make it a challenge, actually, to look for something we don't see every 5 seconds.
Let's take a quick break. I hope you are enjoying today's interview. If you want to find out more about my today's guest, have a look at the podcast show notes. You will find them in your podcast application. I hope very much you are already subscribed to Photography Radio. If not, make sure you do it now and don't miss any of our future episodes. Interviews, inspiration, latest news and trends, all things photography in one podcast feed. Thanks so much for listening, and now let's get back to today's interview. Do you think when compared to what street photography used to be a few decades ago, exactly, let's say in the times of Cartier-Bresson, I don't know, Vinogran or Walker Evans, do you think this genre as a whole has changed a lot or not at all?
I think it has changed because it has become so popular. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of very disrespectful street photographers that are making it more difficult, no matter what. You see those privacy laws popping up all over the place. I don't pay attention to them because they're very gray, and I certainly, there is no picture in my body of work that the person should feel embarrassed about or anything. I really capture beauty and everyday life. That's really my goal. So I'm okay with I'm okay photographing the same way anywhere in the world, and but I think there's been trends, like getting that reaction from people after you just shove the camera, in their face, getting that eye contact that is provoked. I don't like that. That's not my personality either, and I just don't like that look. I mean, I think a good photograph, documentary photography, you should want to put on your wall. Who wants to put on their wall a close-up picture of a person just startled, like a deer in headlights? I don't like that approach. So I think this is kind of going away now. It's changing. There's definitely a lot of stage shots, a lot of post-processing. So it's hard to tell what is what. Sometimes you look at a body of work and it seems like it's always the same person in the silhouette. So very well that is a person that was staged. And it's fine if you do it that way. It's just not documentary photography. It's not street photography. It's directed, and that should be revealed. That should be out in the open. I think it's a shame that people now don't really know. It's like, oh, is that real or not? And that's why I make a point of my photograph is 100% real. I mean, sometimes I do have eye contact, but it happens organically. But I would, I never ask someone, oh, could you walk there, or could you do this again? Or no. It just defeats the purpose. Then it's too easy. And what's the point? I think the reason why we're so hooked on this and so addicted, it's because it's so difficult. And that's why if it was easy and if we could bring a model with us and stage them all day long, we'd get tired of it, because that's taking away the merit of making a good photograph. I mean, yeah, you still need the technical expertise to make it work. But it's taking away that the part of street photography that is so special. And that's why, who cares about technical perfection? It's not about that. It's about the emotion. Not sure I answered your question, but.
Yeah, you answered even more than one, actually. I was about to ask you about exactly street photography, including people, of course, in the frames. And people are very often the main subject of your images, right? So, but you just said you actually rather don't interact with your subjects, or does it happen that, after taking the shot, you get into a conversation with your subject?
If people come to me or ask me something, I will definitely interact with them. Most of the time, they don't know I photograph them. I don't bother them. I photograph a beautiful moment. Sometime, if I know I have a beautiful photograph of a child, for example, and the mom is still there, and I'll go to them. I said, because, I'm a mom, and I would have loved to have a good, candid photograph of my child taken by a photographer on the street that was really something special. And so I would actually go and give him my card. I said, look, I just photographed your child playing with the feeding the ducks at the pond or whatever it was. That is very precious, and I would love to send you a copy, but it's rare. I mean, I'll do street portraits where actually I talk with the person and then take a couple shots. But I'm such an extrovert that is too easy for me because I talk with people all the time.
Okay.
So I usually talk with people and I completely forget to take a picture because we're telling our life stories and then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to take a picture. So.
And in Paris, probably you end up with a glass of wine as well, right?
Exactly. People are so friendly. When Parisians get the bad rep, and I don't know why, because whenever I bring photographers to Paris and I teach there 3-4 times a year, people are just blown away at how friendly people are. They will go out of their way to give you directions and take you to, and my friends, come and see, he owns this restaurant and come inside. It's really cool. You can take pictures. People are so friendly. It's a reflection on you, really. If you're friendly and open and having a good time, and then they will respond the same way. Really anywhere in the world, people are pretty much
so much. So yeah, exactly. So much, but I think so much depends on on your own character. I am an introvert. I am behind the microphone, I can be fine. On the street, I am rather a shy person. So I still, after, I have been doing some street photography, of course, not to this extent as you do. And I still have this shyness and kind of a little personal block, to come up to a person, start talking, and they will sense it. I know it. And I know this is the main part of the problem.
Yeah. You need to come to Paris.
Probably. Let's do it soon. So, but listen, you photograph both in America and in Europe, right? So.
Yeah. And I've taught in Australia as well. Yeah.
Do you see any significant differences when it comes to shooting on the streets of those different continents?
Not really. That's the thing. People are people, and as long as you know in your heart that you're doing something good, because I really do believe that street photography is important, and it's important to do it right. I'm capturing moments of everyday life, so I think that will potentially have value in the future. So I look at it as I'm doing a job. I'm actually capturing life on the streets today, without disrupting anything, without touching anything. It's just life. And
without iPhones.
And trying. You can't escape it. It's at least on the table at the cafe. But I don't have. I hate the way people look when they're looking at their phone. Their neck is all bent. So it's there, and that's important. That is an important aspect of today. We need, because in 10 years, phones will be gone. We'll probably have implants. I don't know. But so I think that is important. It's important to have some background information. It just doesn't have to be so obvious, but it's there. It's always in somebody's hands. So all that is very important in a historical point of view, I think. And that's why it's important to do it right, so we can continue to do it and not just rely on, otherwise all we'll have from these past few years is selfies, because that's all people do. They, in every shot they take, and surveillance footage. And I think that would be a shame.
Have you encountered any problems, when it comes to all those law enforcements when, in different countries? There is so much talk about those, regulations, and how does it actually look from your perspective? Or what do you know about it?
No, and I do know, because I've investigated this in France, because I bring a lot of people to France, whether it's Paris or Normandy, and that's why it's so important, first of all, to be respectful and and not photograph people in vulnerable or situation that may be controversial. People would actually have to prove that you did damage to them in a court of law. For most of those, privacy law, they're very gray, and they usually are to protect people from paparazzi, not from street photographers. So it's a lot of, and French people will often play that card, like, well, I have a right to the image, blah, blah, blah. But they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't really know what that means. And I said, it's fine. There's nothing. I mean, I'm photographing you as a silhouette, and it's okay. If people are afraid, that's why I wrote the book Anonymous, because if people are afraid to photograph people that are recognizable, there are so many ways to have fun with street photography without having the person visible and recognizable. So you can still have fun.
Is it actually the law? Because France is under European Union jurisdiction. Is it actually, does a law like this exist, or is it just, does it apply to only to certain kinds of photography? Having this recognizable person on the image, is it a problem or not?
Well, see, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not gonna go into depth in this, but honestly, and I've talked with many photographers in Europe and people who actually have, lawyers involved just to make sure they protect themselves and so forth. And that is, it's not a law. It is something that people could actually, if, for example, they see a picture of themselves in a situation that is hurting their image, for example, or their famous person, and you take them in a situation that is hurtful for them. So that's mostly applies to paparazzis, basically, so that they don't have their picture in the cover of the Inquirer or whatever, those sensational newspapers of them in an embarrassing situation. And street photographers, we're not out after that type of photograph, so we have nothing to worry about. If we do it right, we don't have to worry about any of that. So, and we're not selling any product with those photographs. So those are pictures, the editorial of fine art. So, people need to start relaxing about that. Because I feel like it's actually counterproductive. People then are more sneaky. Don't be sneaky. Just be open. You're out there with your camera. I'm shooting at 23 millimeter, although I don't bring the camera to my eye, but I'm sure, I'm pretty close to people. But I'm okay with it. I know I'm doing something good and I'm doing something right. And so I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of people asking me, "Oh, did you just take a picture of me?" I said, "Yes, you look beautiful." I mean, this is so Paris, or this is so Rome, and be okay with that. And people just don't know. They just need to be educated about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Let's just hope it's a phase, it's a fad, yeah. And it, exactly like you say, it will kind of, calm down everything sooner than
never
later.
Run away.
Never run away, right? Especially in Paris.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's talk a little bit of gear and techniques. So you said you shoot with the X100, right, from Fujifilm, which is 23 millimeter lens. I think it's around 35, right, in a full frame. Why? Any specific reasons for this focal length for you?
I really think that this is the focal length that works for everything. I mean, I went to Iceland with that camera, so I was totally fine with it. I really think if you can only have one lens, this would be the one. So it's a 35 full frame equivalent, roughly. I love it. It works for me. It's not for everyone, but it's a really perfect focal length for street photography. And I think that's why that lens is on that camera. And when I use the X Pro 2, I use that same focal length because that's my weather sealed kit. So that there is consistency. And also I'm so familiar with the focal length that I'm very quick at framing exactly the way I want the final image to be. So I don't need to crop much, if any. And so I think those are all very important things to do in camera. Photography, you're only going to grow as a photographer if you do all your settings in camera. You're not going to grow as a photographer if you rely on post-processing, period. I mean, that's that. You're going to get really good at post-processing, but that's not the point. If you're a photographer, you should be able to treat your digital camera as if it was film.
I won't be sharing this interview with any of my, software component friends.
That's okay. Sometimes somebody's got to reset the clock.
Apart from the lens, the focal length, are there any other technical requirements, that have or that had to be fulfilled, when in order to make your photography successful? Any kind of features that your camera must have had.
Well, I'm on silent because I used to shoot. My last DSLR was a 5D Mark II, and I was already shooting street photography. I mean, I haven't been doing this for that long, but I started with a DSLR. So I was pretty loud. I was still getting close to people. I would always bring the camera to my eye, but it was a little bit more challenging. So now that I have a camera that is completely silent, I mean, that's definitely great. There are instances like if I'm inside a church or places like that where I'm photographing people, or it's really quiet. I think it would be disrespectful to do it with a noisy camera at that point. So I probably would not get the shots. But now I can with my camera because it's quiet. So that's definitely something. If you have an X100 or any of those cameras, definitely don't, remove the sound. It's not even a real sound. So just remove it.
All right. How about the shutter speeds? Do you, work with one fixed shutter speed for, whatever the scenario might be, or you have it on auto, or what's your approach?
I mean, aperture priority most of the time, unless I want to have motion blur, then it's a decision that I will make on the spot. I'm an aperture priority. I let the ISO go from 200 to 6400. I never worry about the ISO, but I will set parameters so that my shutter speed doesn't go below a certain speed as much as it can. It will override it if needed, but I don't want to have to worry about it if I'm going inside and I'm in a cafe and I see this great shot. So I don't have time to go in there and reset things. So I let the camera the ISO, I don't care. I never denoise anything. It's beautiful no matter what. If I'm inside and it's going to be a little noisy, then it doesn't matter, because if I'm indoors, I'm always in black and white, and I just love the files with at 6400 and that camera gives me. And
what would be this minimum, possible preferable shutter speed for you?
When I'm out and about all day, and if I want to freeze motion, I will set it at 1/75th or 1/200th, and then and I'm good to go. I know that for sure I'm going to freeze motion, but then I will override that if I actually want to get some motion blur on purpose. So, but I never worry about the ISO. And I think you need to let the camera do a lot of the work. I'm on autofocus 99.9% of the time. And the only way I would switch to manual focus, for example, is if I'm shooting through a rainy window and I want the focus to be on the raindrops, not beyond it. But I find that actually this camera, I don't know, either it reads my mind, but it will actually focus where I want it to focus. Much easier.
I think you guys just know each other so well already that you work in tandem, right?
That's right.
Great, Valerie. Listen, let's touch quickly on. We are almost at 40 minutes. With you, right. Always the time flies so fast. Let's touch on your teaching quickly. You run workshops, webinars. You write books on street photography. So there's definitely a teacher in you, right?
Yes.
When did you discover this need of sharing knowledge and skills with other aspiring photographers?
Well, I think you're either born a teacher or you're not. And I always wanted to be a teacher. I went to school. undergrad to be a teacher in languages, not photography. And then I changed my mind, did something else in grad school. But then when I became a photographer and I'm completely self-taught, working for clients wasn't doing it for me. And I was a commercial photographer for a long time. And then people started asking me, why don't you just bring people to Paris and, be a photography experience and cultural. And then that's how I started. And I just there's nothing I love doing more than opening people's eyes and teaching about vision, because it's so much about learning to see. It's so not about what you shoot with. So it's really about opening people's eyes and seeing students year after year who come on different adventures with me, see how much they've improved. And there's so much more. It's all about teaching people to be more discerning and not machine gun it. I want my students to really know what they want to say before they press the shutter, and not rely on the random shot. And that has really showed great results. I see my students who have been working with for a while shoot so few frames now, but their rate of keeper has gone up so much compared to the days where they would just shoot and cross their fingers that something would come out. Yes, something would come out, but it's lucky at that point, and nobody wants to settle for the lucky shot. There should be intent. There should be intent in every time you press the shutter.
Yeah, so this is wonderful. You definitely have this gift, of inspiring them, sharing the skills, sharing your knowledge with your students. Does it happen that you also learn from your own students?
Oh, all the time. It's so fun when we do critique work and I see shots that I'm like, oh, I was there and I did not see that. And it's just so beautiful. And it's funny because it's not from the most experienced photographers. I've been blown away by the total beginners, because they don't let the gear get in the way. They focus on seeing and not on, their settings. And it's all about seeing. So often the real beginner will have that gift of not being bothered by the technical part. And they will see better. So that always blows my mind.
And also not influenced by any preconceptions, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Valerie, what are you working on? Are you having a Christmas break, or are you, full speed into 2020? How does it look in the next couple of months for you?
I'm starting with Paris in January, and I'm excited. And there is pretty much a workshop every month. I'm trying to take it a little bit easier next year because I've been getting more requests of one-on-one workshops. So I want to leave a little room for that, and then do some more speaking engagements because I kind of missed that. I didn't have much time this year. Still podcasting, but yeah, people can check my website. There a spot here, a spot there, in Paris, French Riviera, Normandy, Lisbon, London. Yeah, I'm going to be in a few places next year. Yeah.
I will link to everything in the show notes. Your latest book?
So I published 2 fine art books this year. That was kind of those were self-published, which was great, but I learned a lot, and it's a lot of work. So I'm about to sign a contract with a new publisher because I'm not sure I want to do the self-publishing too often. But so I published Paris and Dogs. So those are 2 fine art books last year. But I have a lot of ebooks on street photography, and also my book that's available on Amazon, Street Photography, Creative Vision Behind the Lens, was published with Focal Press about 2 years ago. And actually it's going in, it's on the Chinese market now. I think it was into translation, and it's hitting.
I think that's a good market to go into.
I don't know. But it's hitting the French market in the spring because it's going into translation now. So,
nice.
So it's going to be popping up all over the place. But I think most photographers can, know enough English to look at the English version. I don't have time to translate all my books, but my native language is French, but my workshops, I speak French when I have French people on the workshops, but the workshops are in English. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Valerie, last question is Is there anything you wished I would have asked you about, but I didn't?
No, I'm
anything you would
each other again.
Anything you would like people to know about you?
No, again, I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. So I have from free to luxury. I have free podcast. I have a bunch of things, and then I have some weekend workshops, and then I have the week-long luxury accommodation workshop. So it's just like the whole gamut of things I want to be able to share with as many people all over the world. So yeah, that's why podcast, honestly, the podcast is free. And I just love that anyone, anywhere in the world, and I think there are listeners in over 150 countries now, anywhere in the world can actually get some inspiration through the podcast. And you know that's such a good feeling. And that's totally free. And I love that. So trying to serve the community at large.
Absolutely agree. Podcast should stay free. This podcast will also stay free forever. And Valerie, great. Thank you so much. I hope you get some rest, so some winding down in December before hitting 2020.
If I learn how to do that.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of this year, get some rest. And I hope to catch up.
Next year.
It has to happen finally that I actually join you once in Paris.
That's right. Hey,
as a participant.
I'll invite you. Come in January. I have a couple spots left.
Okay, let me think about it. My wife loves Paris, absolutely. So who knows? It might actually happen. Thank you so much, Valerie. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hit subscribe on your podcast app. It would mean a lot for us to have you as our regular listener. Head over to photographyradio.com to drop your suggestion for future editions of Photography Radio or simply to say hello. We would absolutely love to hear from you. In the meantime, have a wonderful night, and we will be back with more photography in your ears very soon.